Hi, it's Doug. When I was in sixth grade, something exciting happened. One day, I came home from school, and my mom and dad sat me and my sisters down. They had a big announcement. They said, "We're going to move. Not away from town, but somewhere close by. It'll be a new house." Now, I knew exactly what they had in mind. You see, my whole life, my dad had been talking about his dream to one day have a backyard with a pond in it. Now, that might sound like a strange thing to want in life, but the thing you have to understand about my dad is that he loves growing flowers and trees. He loves landscaping. And for him, a pond was like the ultimate setting for the most beautiful garden. He wanted to grow lily pads and have flowers all along the banks, and maybe even have a little fountain in the middle. He was so excited. I was excited too. I wasn't as wild about gardening as he was. For me, that was usually a chore. But the thing I got most excited about was all the possible animals I'd now get to spend my time catching. You see, my cousins lived near a pond, and I remember my cousin Mikey taking me out in a little rowboat when I was younger. And I got to catch a turtle in that pond. I thought that was very cool. Maybe now I'd be able to catch things like turtles and frogs in my own pond. So I said to my parents, "I can't wait. This is going to be awesome. Where is this pond? Can we go see it now?" We got in the car and drove out to the site of the new house. When we got out of the car, I was confused. There was no pond anywhere. I thought, Dad, are you sure you got the right place? Where's the pond?" He explained, "Well, there isn't a pond here. Yet. We're going to make one." Make a pond? I was surprised. I didn't know that was a thing you could do. Like, dig a hole and fill it with water? That sounds like a lot of work. Now, luckily, as my dad explained, he knew someone who owned an excavator who agreed to come out and dig the hole. But I said to my dad, "So, where are you going to get the water from? There's no hose or faucet around here or anything yet." I knew that was how people filled up swimming pools. My dad laughed a little. "Oh, right," he said. "You have no idea how this works, do you? I didn't used to know either. It's okay." I guess I had no clue. I said, "Oh, well, are we going to have to wait for rain to fill it up or something?" My dad shook his head no. We weren't going to do that either. "Okay, well, if you weren't going to fill it with water from a hose, and we're not going to wait for the rain to fill it up, then how is there going to be water in this pond? Where's the water going to come from?" My dad pulled a shovel out of the trunk of the car. "Watch this," he said, and he started to dig a little hole. When he dug the hole down to a few feet, he said, "Look in there. What do you see?" To my amazement, there was water. How is that possible? What do you think? Why did my dad hit water when he dug down?
So, I want you to actually write down a prediction. You can write it in your science notebook, or if you've lost that, any piece of scrap paper, or you can write it on a Google document, even if you want. But how is it possible that there's water in this hole? How did the water get underground? Take a second to think about that. You can pause me, and then when you're ready to keep going, unpause me, and I'll keep going.
Why was there water in the hole once my dad started digging down? It turns out this is something that's true in many places, not just where we were digging. If you dig into the ground, as you're digging, at some point, you might notice that the hole starts to become wet. It starts to fill with water. Now, you won't always find water right away. Sometimes you have to dig really deep down, like this man is doing. It's possible you've even seen this already for yourself. If you've ever had the chance to dig down in sand, like at the beach, say you're starting to make a sandcastle or something. As you dig, what you can notice is that the sand becomes wet. And if you keep digging, look at this. This boy has dug down into the sand, and the hole filled with water. But whether it's a hole in sand or in dirt, where is this water coming from? How did it get underground? As you might have guessed, it has something to do with rain. Now, you might know, especially if you did our earlier unit, Work of Water, that when it rains on hills or mountains, that water flows downhill. Some of that water forms rivers, most of which eventually flow towards the ocean. But Does all rainwater flow into rivers? Well, as digging these holes reveals, apparently it doesn't. In fact, a lot of rainwater seeps into the ground and somehow stays down there unseen. Why is that? What's going on? Well, rather than just telling you about this, let me show you. My friend Amy put together this model. It's really helpful for understanding what's going on. Amy put gravel into this plastic box to represent the ground. Now imagine this is me standing on the ground. All I see and feel is dry ground. There's no water here. Now suppose I use a watering can so that I've got water falling from above, just like rain would do in the real world. That rainwater seeps down into the ground. It disappears from sight. I don't think about it anymore. But suppose now I dig down into the ground. If I dig down, if I make a hole in the ground, I might just discover that at a certain level below the ground, oh, look at that. There's water down there. Now I've exposed some of that underground water. And look, in this case, I made a pond. Because this is a model, we can turn it and look at it from the side too. Watch as we dig now. Now you can see what's going on down there as I dig. When rain falls, the rainwater seeps down into the ground because there are spaces between the little bits of rock. The ground beneath our feet very often is made of things like this. It could be gravel or sand or just rock that has tiny spaces or pores. And so even though the land on the surface might be totally dry, there may be water under the surface in the spaces between the gravel or rock. Scientists call this type of ground by a special name, an aquifer, from the Latin words aqua, which means water, and fer, meaning to carry or hold. It's ground that can hold water, an aquifer. Now, my dad once described it to me as being somewhat like an underground lake. That's sort of helpful, but only as long as you're clear that it's not like a cave filled with water. An aquifer is not something you could swim in. It's just water between tiny spaces in the rock. Now, you might think that rainwater would just keep seeping downwards, all the way to the center of the earth. But at a certain depth, you get to a layer of completely solid rock that doesn't have any holes in it. In our model here, that's represented by the bottom of the box. Without any spaces for the water to flow into, water can't seep down any further. And since water is a liquid that just seeps between pores of rock, notice also that the water underground forms a straight line. In fact, it doesn't matter what the landscape above looks like. Even if there's hills on top, the water line is still straight, and the water seeps down as far as it can. So, to summarize, sometimes there's water found underground, at least where the ground has tiny holes or spaces where rain can seep downwards. We call this water-filled ground an aquifer. The pond my dad dug was basically a big hole in the backyard where we exposed water that was already there in the ground. In other words, by digging that hole, we revealed water that was sitting in an aquifer. This is what most ponds and lakes are. This knowledge that in some places there's water below the ground, this isn't just useful knowledge for people who want to dig their own ponds. The existence of aquifers, underground water, is an even bigger deal than that. Think about it. Why might the discovery of an aquifer in the ground be important? Think back to our earlier mystery.
So here are your final 2 discussion questions. You can think about these or you can write them down. The first question is, where do you think people get their water if they don't live near lakes or rivers? So this map probably looks familiar from when we did our first mystery last week. And that's showing you fresh water and salt water. But if you don't live near one of those black dots, how do you think they get their water now that we know what we know about mystery number 2? You can pause me if you need more time to think or to write down. And then my final question is, how do people get water from far underground? How do you think they do that? You can again write it down or just be thinking about it, and we will come back to these questions when I see you guys on Friday. That's the end of science. Great job, guys.